Haven't you ever wondered why Kernikos across the street looks a youthful 60 when he's definitely over 80? And at the same time, why Kyrianis next door looks 70 but is in fact barely 55? In this video, we'll take a closer look at this process. We will explore why we age, what exactly happens in our bodies, and crucially, why there are such vast differences from one person to the next. Let's watch together to find out. I imagine you won't find it interesting. I'm Konstantinos Kalakis and I'm a cardiologist. Today we will look at what mechanisms wear down our cells, because everything starts from the cell, and what these mechanisms mean for our health and for living a healthy life as we age. More importantly, which conditions are those that influence us to slow down this process. The cell membrane is an absolutely key component when we want to properly explain the complex process of what aging is. This gradual decline in biological function that occurs over time is not in itself a disease. Rather, it is more accurately described as an increased vulnerability to stress and a higher susceptibility to illness. It's important to understand that many small cumulative events are involved in this process, not just a single isolated cause. Therefore, we can confidently say that the natural process of aging, when considered in relation to a specific disease or illness, are fundamentally two different things. Say, aging certainly does increase the statistical risk for many conditions, but it is crucial to remember that it is not a disease and it is not an illness in and of itself. Every specific disease has additional unique factors that cause it, and this is where the proper distinction between disease and aging can be clearly seen. The logic of sequence. Everything starts from the molecule. From the molecule, from the cell, from the deepest and smallest components, the tiniest element of our existence. So, it all begins with a molecular change, which signifies a fundamental change happening at the cellular level. When this cellular change occurs, the tissue that the cell is a part of also begins to change. This progression leads to what we call tissue dysfunction, meaning the tissue is no longer functioning correctly. And when this dysfunctional tissue is part of an organ, the organ's performance is affected, which in turn impacts the entire organism, ultimately leading to the appearance of clinical symptoms. Slower recovery, less endurance, all those things that we usually describe. Something very important. Why do we age? Why does aging exist in nature? Nature itself gives a particularly crucial priority, and that priority is, of course, reproduction. What matters is the perpetuation of the species, not the preservation of the already existing parts of nature, organisms in nature over time. Nature doesn't want us to be Methuselahs. It wants young people to reproduce the species. This implies that the body's biological budget, its inherent predisposition, or the strategy it uses for repairing cells to keep us young, isn't actually designed for long-term preservation. Its primary purpose is not focused on keeping us young indefinitely. This leads to a fundamental trade-off. We experience long-term negative side effects as a consequence of the biological benefits we gained early in life. And the blueprint for this entire process, including these built-in trade-offs, is encoded from the very beginning, because ultimately everything starts from our DNA. Every single day, our DNA sustains minor damages and scratches, resulting from both our own internal metabolism and various external factors in the environment. The cellular repair mechanisms that exist are unfortunately not 100% perfect over the course of a lifetime. These small, seemingly insignificant mistakes can gradually alter cellular function, which ultimately means that this molecular damage begins to accumulate. A particularly characteristic and critically important part of our DNA, or more specifically of the chromosome, are the protective caps that are found at the very ends of each and every chromosome. They are fundamentally crucial. With every single cell division, these get progressively shorter, causing them to deteriorate and become less functional over time. When they become too short, the process of cell division stops entirely. The chromosome can no longer divide, and so in the first instance we experience what is called cell death. This results in less renewal in the skin, in the blood, in the intestine, and essentially everywhere throughout the body. So what exactly does this mean? The term epigenetic essentially means anything that is not strictly and unchangeably predetermined by our genetic code, the DNA we are born with. Instead, these are changes that can occur throughout our lifetime, developing due to a wide variety of additional factors that intervene in our lives. These influential factors include a vast range of things. For example, our overall lifestyle, the specifics of our diet, the amount of physical exercise we engage in, and even our underlying character. Truly, almost everything. So what happens with these gene switches? Essentially, they begin to lose their precision. These switches are the critical regulators that tell our genes exactly when to turn on and when to turn off. As they become less accurate over time, this vital control system starts to falter, disrupting the orderly and essential process of genetic expression within our cells. Essentially, the cells begin to get confused about their fundamental identity, losing track of what kind of cell they are supposed to be. As a direct consequence of this, they become much less precise and reliable in how they respond to the various signals and stimuli that are meant to direct their actions. The characteristic damages are DNA damage, shortening of telomeres as we mentioned earlier, epigenetic changes with loss of proteostasis, that is the maintenance of cells, mitochondria, we have changes in the mitochondria, cellular senescence, inflammation or chronic inflammation. Keep in mind this issue of chronic inflammation. We will encounter it again later. If not in this video, then in a future one. Proteostasis and autophagy. Autophagy is the process by which a cell, when it ceases to be functional, self-destructs, thereby making way for a new cell to replace it. These crucial control systems that govern processes like autophagy and proteostasis, that is, the essential maintenance of our cells, eventually lose or reduce their functionality. Consequently, we see an accumulation of misfolded proteins, meaning proteins that are not structured as they should be. This in turn creates stress on neurons, on muscles, and generally on the organism as a whole, though it's not a uniform stress. The mitochondria. They are in fact extremely important. The mitochondria are the part of the cell that, for example, is responsible for producing the essential energy for the cell to maintain its existence and to properly carry out its functions. So when there is a significant reduction in energy production and more reactive molecules inside the mitochondria, we experience noticeable and detrimental effects on our organs. So this is what happens over time. Cellular aging, what we call aging. The cells become stuck quite remarkably outside of the process of division. What this means is they do not continue to divide and instead remain in some kind of intermediate stage. From this state, they begin to secrete inflammatory signals. These inflammatory signals in turn cause inflammation, and more specifically, chronic inflammation. Indeed, this is recognized as one of the major causes of chronic inflammation. While this can provide a little help in healing, it ultimately causes a lot of damage when these cells accumulate over time. This is very important. At a fundamental level, our bodies are equipped with systems for the detection of available nutrients. These systems act as incredibly important biological sensors, which are responsible for regulating the delicate balance between cellular growth and tissue repair. Unfortunately, as we get older, this carefully maintained equilibrium has a tendency to shift, moving more decisively in the direction of promoting growth. Regulation affects longevity in organisms and is an essential determining factor in how the cell works, how the organ functions. Stem cell decline. What are stem cells? Stem cells are cells that are omnipotent. They can develop into any type of cell. This signifies the profound nature of a true recovery. It's not a simple repair, but a fundamental process of returning something to its absolute original state. Because this action is so total, it inevitably creates significant and unavoidable consequences. Critically, these consequences are not contained. They are universal, affecting every single person and every part of the system without exception. Therefore, when a true recovery is achieved, everyone involved must face the results. There is no escaping the outcome, as we all share in the responsibility and the effects that follow from this complete restoration. Now, regarding chronic conditions, what we have previously referred to as mild inflammation is actually a very important and significant factor to consider. It has been discovered and is being intensely studied in recent years. What we are discussing is a condition known as low-grade inflammation. This is essentially a persistent, low-level type of inflammation that can continue for a long time within the body, without showing the typical overt signs of its presence. To better understand this, it's helpful to recall what inflammation is in a broader sense. Inflammation is the body's natural, protective reaction to any foreign agent or injury it perceives as harmful. The classic signs of this reaction are usually quite obvious, including visible redness, a sensation of heat, noticeable swelling, and the experience of pain. What happens underneath the surface is that the body goes to the site of the damage and through various biological processes attempts to repair it, but this is what we call acute inflammation. Now, there is also another more concerning type of inflammation, chronic inflammation. This is a low-grade inflammation that doesn't show obvious signs and isn't easily recognized, which is why it's often called a silent killer. So where does this inflammation come from, and what are its underlying causes? Aged cells, the cellular debris we mentioned earlier, and importantly, the gut microbiome all play a role. So we have less precise immunity, which means we have weaker immunity. As a result, we are more susceptible to disease and illness. Extracellular matrix and crosslinks. It is the scaffold of the tissues, which changes from elastic to rigid. Sugary crosslinks increase stiffness. The result is pressure and loss of elasticity in the skin, which is what we ultimately observe as aging on the surface. The skin, for instance, is also a critically important organ. In fact, it is widely known as the single largest organ in our entire body. All of these various factors we've mentioned contribute to its overall condition as well. This is the fundamental reason why issues such as a loss of elasticity, skin laxity, and so forth eventually appear. Furthermore, the microbiome is another area that is very important to consider. It is currently estimated that the intestine, and especially the large intestine, contains approximately 1.5 kilograms of these diverse microorganisms. Of this total 1.5 kilograms of microbial mass, a certain portion is incredibly beneficial to our body, while yet another portion can be quite harmful. To put it another way, some of these microorganisms produce substances that actively help the body in a multitude of ways, while others, on the other hand, do the exact opposite. So this leads to a critical question. What exactly happens to our health when there are significant changes within this delicate microbial community of the gut? As we age, we experience a significant disruption of our crucial internal biological rhythms, which includes our sleep-wake cycles and the delicate balance of our hormonal systems. Consequently, because of these internal shifts, we begin to see noticeable effects that manifest in our daily lives, impacting our available energy levels, our emotional state and mood, and even the fundamental processes of our metabolism itself. You can surely understand just how profoundly these age-related changes, which inevitably occur over the years, can affect the body's overall functionality. These internal changes result in a wide array of observable consequences. For example, they lead to a markedly slower healing process for even minor injuries, like cuts or bruises, that would have resolved much more quickly in our youth. Furthermore, there is a gradual but steady reduction in our overall muscle mass, which directly translates into a discernible loss of physical strength and power. As we know and can observe, this decline is a common aspect of aging, so there's no need for further detailed explanation. Simultaneously, our skin becomes visibly thinner and more fragile, losing some of its youthful elasticity. In addition, we perceive sensory information differently. Our senses may become less sharp, and we process sensory input with less intensity than when we were younger. Through these complex internal mechanisms, a delay is introduced in the nervous system's initial processing of any external stimuli that may have occurred, meaning our reaction times can be slower. So this leads us to ask, what exactly is happening within our bodies now? And very importantly, why do these changes seem to differ so much in their pace from one person to another? Why does Kyriakos seem to be at this level when he's actually at another? And why does Kyrianis, even though he's less, appear to be more? There is a genetic basis for these various tendencies. Some people age more slowly, while others age more quickly. Lifestyle, childhood, these change this trajectory. They intervene in this course, either by accelerating a condition or by slowing down a process, or rather a procedure. Factors. Nutrition. There will be some upcoming videos in which we will focus specifically on our nutrition. What we eat is a matter of declining demand. We don't know what we eat. You probably can't even imagine what we eat. So there are many factors to consider, such as nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress, sunlight, and even the effects of environmental pollution. All of these different factors are known to contribute epigenetically to the significantly different tendencies in our own individual growth rate or the particular rate at which we happen to age. Have you enjoyed the video so far, and do you find the topic itself to be interesting? In the event that your answer to my previous question is in the affirmative, I would be genuinely delighted and would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to share your thoughts. I am particularly interested in hearing any and all of the comments, detailed perspectives, or constructive feedback you might be willing to provide on this specific matter, as your input is incredibly valuable to me. Your comments help promote the video and give YouTube the opportunity to show it to more people. But let's move on. So the fundamental question becomes, what exactly is it that slows down this particular curve we are examining? And to be very clear, we are not talking about slowing down our chronological age, the one that's on our official records. That number, of course, is something that doesn't change. But what we are actually referring to is the ability to slow down the outward physical appearance of aging and the internal biological progression of it. Exercise, which should be both aerobic and strengthening, very specifically by people who know how to handle it. Sufficient protein, nutritious diet. Pay attention to your diet. I will insist. I have experienced situations and I know very well what it means. Sleep. Let's begin with sun protection. Honestly, it sometimes makes me angry and even saddened when I see people spending hours upon hours in the sun, especially during the summer months. They expose themselves to its rays, perhaps thinking that sunscreen creams offer complete protection. But we must be clear, the sun is extremely harmful and a major factor in skin damage. Next, let's consider smoking. Beyond its well-known negative effects on the lungs, the very act of smoking and the substances in cigarettes significantly accelerate the aging process, which affects the appearance of your skin. It is also critically important to monitor your health metrics. Keep a close watch on your blood pressure and your blood sugar levels, as regular monitoring is key. Finally, a brief word on vaccinations. I want to be very clear that I am not trying to get into the pro or anti-vaccination debate, especially not regarding COVID. That is not my intention here at all. Vaccinations that need to be done for both children and adults, social connection, our interactions with those around us. Finally, nature's products, natural products, as much as possible nowadays. And supplements, the right dietary supplements. Not just anything. In summary, we have molecular damage, dysregulated cell signals, aged cells, rigid scaffolding, and chronic inflammation. These all reduce organ functionality, leading to increased risk. In the next videos, we'll discuss supplements and interventions. It's important to pinpoint exactly where we are targeting within the given pathway. As part of the larger process we mentioned earlier, we must also clearly distinguish between what we know for certain based on current data and what remains uncertain or requires more research. Safety and realistic expectations. We would like to extend our sincerest gratitude for taking the time to watch this video. We truly appreciate your support. I hope you found it interesting. If so, leave me a comment or give a like. Your comment can also be a suggestion. It will help us. Thank you very much. Take care.